Welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast. Whether you're a first-time facilitator or a seasoned pro, listen in for tips and tricks to make a bigger impact at the next workshop you deliver. And now, your host.
She's Team Apple and is obsessed with the new iPad Pro 10.5,
Leanne Hughes.
Hey you, and thanks for tuning into episode 46 of the First Time Facilitator podcast. I'm your host, Leanne Hughes, and I'm here to help you develop and deliver workshops that kill. Happy Christmas Eve to all of you, and I hope you're taking the time to relax with family and friends and also recharging for a very big 2019. So this podcast has opened up a ton of doors and opportunities, such as getting to know today's guest. She was also frustrated with the lack of energy and passion and care demonstrated by facilitators she had seen deliver workshops. So she decided to take action and create a community that really values engaging learning and development strategies. I'll introduce her in a moment, but first, a couple of quick announcements. So we are 3 episodes away from the half century of first-time facilitator episodes, and I'll be celebrating by hosting a meetup in Brisbane on Friday the 18th of January. If you'd like to join in, I'd love to meet you there. Shoot me an email at hello@firsttimefacilitator.com or a DM in Instagram at firsttimefacilitator. I've also had quite a few people reach out and want to know how to start a podcast. So I'll be running a one-day workshop on the 13th of January in a beautiful venue called Bright HQ in Brisbane. So the workshop title is called 2019, the year you launch a podcast. So if you love the podcasting medium and you have an idea for a show, come along. It's very much a doing type of workshop where we'll follow a clear step-by-step action plan to start your podcast. Now, I'm limiting this event to 14 people and there's an early bird sale on till the 31st of December. So you can grab your tickets by finding the show notes for this episode at firsttimefacilitator.com/episode 46. And finally, if you want to connect with listeners following the show, join our community on Facebook. It's called The Flip Chart. Just search for The Flip Chart in Facebook. Be great to see you there. Once you're in, just please introduce yourself and where you're from and what your struggles or challenges or opportunities that you see in your world of facilitation and learning and development. Okay, today's guest is Kerry Brocks, and she is the CEO and founder of the Institute for Learning Professionals. Now, we met up over a coffee in Brisbane around May this year, and I remember that our conversation was so yappy. We just could not stop talking about the struggles that facilitators have and just how it's so important to support the community of learning professionals, just so that we can stamp out boring and stifling workshops forever. I walked back to the office after meeting with Kerry, just feeling super excited to know that we're on the same warpath. And that's why I invited her on the show, to share with you the great work that she's doing for facilitators through the Institute for Learning Professionals. So a bit about Kerry. She strongly believes in actively involving participants to develop their skills and knowledge, keeping them focused, interested, and willing to learn in an interactive and highly productive workshop environment. She has worked in various management positions over the last 12 years, including Education and Development Manager for the Australian Institute of Management. And she just has a just vast experience in designing, developing, and conducting training initiatives across a range of industries for all levels of staff. She also has a ton of accreditations, including Team Management Systems Accreditation, Myers-Briggs, Extended DISC, Neurolinguistic Program certificates, and she has an Associate Diploma in Human Resource Development and is a Certified Master Coach, amongst many others. I don't have time to go through all of them. Well done, Kerry. Now, as I mentioned before, if you'd like to connect with Kerry and find out more about the ILP, you can visit the show notes for this episode at firsttimefacilitator.com/episode 46. Now, enjoy your turkey, enjoy your prawns, wherever you are in the world. Have a wonderful Christmas. And also, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Now, on to the show. I would love to welcome to the First Time Facilitator podcast, Kerry Brocks. Kerry, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thanks, Leanne. Great to be here.
It's lovely, and I think you're the perfect person to place in front of our audience for first-time facilitators because of what you do. And what I'd like to do to start is just to find out a bit about your career background and what are some of the career pivots that got you to where you are now running the Institute for Learning Professionals?
Probably sort of going through my career, because it was actually the very first training program I went on. They suddenly went, that's what I want to do when I grow up, and I think that was around about 21. But I got an opportunity to work in several large organisations in the learning development field, but it was when I was actually working at the Australian Institute of Management as their education manager where I got to see a lot of L&D professionals or trainers, facilitators, coaches in action, that I noticed there was a whole lot of trainers that had different skill levels and quite a difference in the levels. What I started to investigate was, well, why was that happening? And basically the difference was that some of them had stopped their professional development once they got their Cert 4 in training and assessment, whereas others had gone on and honed their craft and really made an effort to develop it. So, and I realised there wasn't that many opportunities out there for people to keep going with their development as an L&D professional. So that was one of the aims I started the Institute. But the second one was that I noticed when I worked within organisations, you got to know the people in your organisation and what you were doing. And if you're an independent, you didn't get that opportunity to talk to other L&D professionals who got what you did. So I know from my background, I think what we do is fairly simple, but I try to explain it to people and their eyes sort of just glaze over. So it's really nice to have that opportunity to talk to like-minded professionals.
Yeah, and look, I really like that you observed this sort of skill gap and this need, but what you did was you didn't sit back and sort of complain about it. You took action to start this institute. How many years ago has the institute been running?
It's about 11 and a half years ago, and I actually started it part-time when I was still working in an L&D national role, but it grew legs and there obviously was a need there. So we started with myself and 2 colleagues who believed in what I was doing, but we've now got over 4,000 members as part of the institute, and that's basically through word of mouth. So we obviously are doing something right, which is good.
I think you're right. I think we all sort of need a support network as well, and particularly in organisations when you understand what you're preaching about and what's really important, but it's sort of hard to communicate that with people that don't have the learning and development background as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you mentioned that you noticed a bit of a skill gap between the really great trainers and facilitators and the ones that weren't so great. What do you think are, in your opinion, what are some key skills of the strong facilitators? What makes them so good?
I think mainly that they're either solution or they're learner focused. They know what the learner needs to do differently back in the workplace, not just what they need to do at the end of the workshop. They also are design thinkers, so they're able to be flexible with their design. They're aware of a variety of different training methodologies, so they can design the right solution for their organisation. I see a lot of trainers that have got their tried and true session plan or workshop, and they just sort of rehash that over and over again, whereas the other ones can know that this will work better with a client if I try this or I do part of this blended learning and mix it up a bit. And I think the other thing that differentiates some of the trainers that I've seen is also their business smarts. They know how to develop their consulting skills, or they have developed their consulting skills, how to market their products and also how to engage the stakeholder, because it's not just about the learner, it's about, getting the managers involved before, during and after the training event.
And so what are the ones that stand out for you in terms of that business consultation? Have you seen a process that works really well, or is it just their ability to ask questions and to deliver, and they've got a really great headshot in LinkedIn? Is it a combination of all those things?
Well, there's a whole range of things, and yes, sort of like, LinkedIn is one. It's sort of about marketing, building up their brand. I think one of the things I find, and it's probably one of those differentiators as well, is that quite often people will get their basic qualification. It might be their Cert 4 in training and assessment or something similar, but they think that gives them a ticket to be a general practitioner to deliver anything. So what I would suggest, the ones that really stand out are the ones that have worked out what they're passionate about, what are those 1 or 2 key areas, and that's what they focus on, and they build up their brand. They keep developing that knowledge, not just in their facilitation skills, but in that area of expertise. So they do build their reputation, their credibility in that particular field.
It's kind of like, the master of none thing if you're a generalist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got, and quite often, people really are keen for the work. So people say, can you do time management? Oh, absolutely. Can you do conflict? Yes, I can. And they probably do it well, but they could do it so much better if they know the latest techniques, they know, the latest developments in those particular areas, as opposed to, I've got some great activities on conflict management or time management that, are tried and tested sort of thing.
And I know, like in a lot of sort of business marketing podcasts I listen to, they say the riches are in the niches, but in Australia we say niches. So like it doesn't rhyme as well. No. But like if you're looking for sports shoes, you wouldn't just go to like a general store. You might go to like a running store place because they specialise it. The store people there have great knowledge in that. So the credibility then automatically sort of skyrockets, which is what you want as a facilitator. It's that credibility.
Absolutely. So, and just by that knowledge and talking and engaging people in what it just shines through. And sort of rather than, for example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I still see trainers that drag that out, and that's sort of been, it's so old school. It's, 20, 25, 30 years old, and so there's so many other new things that you could be sort of sharing with your learners, as opposed to this the old stuff, and even if you blend in the past and the future or the current, as opposed to just going back to your old models over and over again.
I have seen a really great updated version of Maslow's hierarchy where it has Wi-Fi and phone battery at the bottom of the pyramid.
I've seen that one. That would be good. And you can sort of update it and things like that, like on what's happening now, because it's so different to what it was when it was first brought out. So
yeah, 100%. So when you see facilitators or trainers that they've just gotten their Cert 4 TAE, which is for those listening around the world, that's the Certificate for in Training and Assessment, which a lot of our vocational trainers required to be in front of a room when you're doing accredited training. But Kerry, you and I have spoken a lot about this, and in that certification, there's only one unit on actually delivering training.
Actually, they've just reinvented. They've just relaunched the Cert 4 in Training and Assessment. There's 3, but there's very little on design. So there's 3, I think, like plan, organise and deliver, but it sort of works sort of on templates for different styles of training.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess that's some improvement. But you've got your Cert 4 TAE. What do you think people struggle with when they are first-time facilitators and having to lead these workshops?
It's very hard for me because I'm not a competency-based trainer, so I have a few concerns about the Cert 4 in Training and Assessment. So, yes, very good foundation for people who are doing competency-based training. The thing I see that really concerns me is that there's a real lack of units of competency on design, whereas I think if you design a really good learning process or event, it works well because you're taking in consideration the whole process of the learner. What do they need to go through before, during and after? How do I get the managers involved? How do I make sure the learning is embedded? The biggest thing with the Cert 4 is basically they learn at the end of my workshop, my participants will be able to do blah. So it really doesn't get them to think about, well, what is it that they're going to be doing differently in the workplace? So how do we need to improve their performance? How can we support them? And how do we make sure that learning is sustainable? Very short-term focused. And is really missing that design, as well as, what are those things that you can do to, help that application back in the workplace.
Oh, that's probably the hardest thing is the embedding piece, because often as facilitators we're just there to, for a couple of days, or we could come back in 3 months, but we're not really there to sustain the change. Have you got any ideas on how we can make the whole embedding piece a bit better?
Yeah, I think there are quite a lot of things to do. I mean, number one would be make sure that you engage their managers. So many times I've spoken to managers post-workshops to see how their learner is going, and they've gone, I haven't caught up with them, or I don't know what they covered, I don't know how to support them. So one would be involve the managers so that they can find opportunities for the learner to apply and share their learning with their peers. The other things are sort of like probably learning sprints or spaced learning after the workshops, which are sort of like short activities which might be new learning, or it might be something to do with their existing learning from the workshop that you've added a new challenge level to it. So they go away for a short period of time, play with those things and then come back and review it or share it with their other learners from the workshop, so that they know sort of after the workshop they might have 6 activities that are coming up that they need to focus on, and because they're an opportunity to share and review, that they do it. So I think that sort of keeps the learner motivated and, just the learning interesting, because as you know, once they go through a learning workshop, once they go back, they're going to get caught up with their day-to-day stuff. They're going to fall back into their own routines. So it's got to be kept top of mind, and you've got to give them opportunities, not every day, but, maybe once a week. You send them a short activity, or it might be an article, and then get them to comment on the article and how that might relate to their workspace. It might be that they touch base with some of the other learners to see what have they applied, what's worked, what hasn't. Just shake it up, make it a bit of variety, but make it enjoyable for them, so it stays top of mind.
Yeah, I like your ideas about buy-in and having multiple touch points, ensuring that the manager buys in, and the front of mind piece, that's crucial. You also mentioned when you sort of see first-time facilitators struggle, it's the design part, which I find really interesting, and it's a whole skill, designing a workshop. Kerry, let's just say that I'm a client, I come to you and I want some kind of training. Let's just say it's communication training. Let's keep it very broad. What is your process for designing a piece of content or a workshop? Do you have a specific way that you approach it? Do you hop onto Google straight away?
I do a fair bit of research, because I do have my really good workshops, as I said, but I just sort of go out and see what's out there. I would spend a bit of time with the organisation just to find out what are some of the issues that they're finding, which is the areas of communication that they want to be worked on, how it's going to be applied. I talk to some of the learners as well as their managers, and basically, as I said before, I don't see learning as a standalone event. To me, it's a process. So, it would be engaging the managers and the learners just to prepare for the learning. I'll then work out which would be the best opportunity. So rather than doing face-to-face, what is a blended solution? Is there anything I can provide to them beforehand coming to the workshop? So what I try and do now is, wherever possible, if there's knowledge or skills, try and provide some e-learning or some opportunity prior to the learning. So when they come on along to the date, they're ready to practice. And then we talk about the challenges that they might face back in the workshop. And then we spend the time, how do we overcome those challenges? So when they hit the workplace or when they go back afterwards, they hit the ground running. So it's really utilising the time that I've got face-to-face or in front of them, if that's the way that I go, to, make the most of that time with them.
Yeah, excellent. I love that you've given them the preparation work. It's very common. I still see it in some workshops where you've asked for a lot of pre-work to be done, or even a conversation with the manager, and you do go up to facilitate and they haven't done it, or they're not really prepared, and you think, oh gosh, we could have really been onto something like I've got to bring everyone now back on the same page, because someone hasn't done their pre-work. So I think that's super important.
Yeah. So you can do some online sort of tools to do that. So everybody sort of pops in, what they've done prior to the workshop, or sort of comment, or, quite often I'll get them to introduce themselves, because I don't like wasting time at the beginning of a workshop with an icebreaker, because I think that's really valuable. So wherever possible, I try and introduce the learners either beforehand, or they've got a preparation activity that they can quickly use at the start of a workshop and share the results of that activity with the other learners as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, do you do much online facilitation work, or is it mainly like the face-to-face with blended tools?
It's mainly face-to-face, but what I've done, I've partnered with a company called Superb Learning. We're about to roll out or develop a whole series of workshops that are going to be online, but there will be touch points where they come in and actually practice the skills. So Superb Learning's background is the e-learning, the blended learning, so it's sort of blending those together. So people, depending if you want to focus in facilitation or if you want to focus on design, there's 2 different pathways you can go and different levels. So you can achieve a certificate in facilitation or a certificate in design, then an advanced certificate, and through to a diploma level.
Oh, fantastic. Is that just for Australia, or is that...
Interesting you said that. We're actually looking at partnering with some institutes overseas and then mapping across their qualifications. So once they achieve our diploma, our aim is that they'll have a global qualification. as well.
Cool.
So, as we talked about before with the Certificate in Training and Assessment in Australia, it is only for competency-based trainers. I have a corporate background, so I want to try and come up with standards, not just in Australia but global, for L&D professionals to be able to deliver, quality training that delivers the results that the organisation needs. And there is nothing at the moment that, there's no pathway that enables people to do that. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I had a listener in Switzerland, of all places, reach out and go, oh, look, this is what I really want to do. I love your podcast, but what's the next step? Like, how do I get some credibility? How do I get a license to do this? And I'm like, I actually didn't know. So that's why I'm asking a few different people for their advice. So if you do something like that is global, I think there's definitely a need for it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm excited. That's sort of one of our things for next year. That's going to be the main focus, and we'll be running some focus groups with just getting people in and talking about what are the skills that L&D professionals need, not just now but in the future. So, and then sort of once we've done that, we can sort of set some standards. We've already been doing some work on it, and we've sort of got a capability model that's got 499 behaviours over 6 dimensions. But that's through my research and talking to fellows. So I want to open it up now and talk to not just corporates about what their needs are, but also, the independents that are out there about, what are the skills that they need.
You mentioned talking to facilitators about some of the challenges as well in your focus groups. Without actually having a chat to them, what do you think their response would be? What do you think some of the facilitated challenges are for 2019?
The number one that I always get, and it's to do with growing their business, so it's more independence, but it's sort of about, well, how can I get more clients? How can I market myself? The other challenges are, how do I make my learning blended learning? So a lot of them are quite frightened with e-learning, and they sort of go back to the tried and true face-to-face training. So it's a matter of them sort of jumping out and learning more about what are some of the things that are available out there. So that's what we want to do. We want to bring in like tech tasters so that we can show some of the latest tools that are out there. We want to take them, our programs, it might be how to create virtual learning. So at the end of it, they'll actually have a virtual learning workshop. Their challenges basically are in regards to changing the design of their workshops. It's finding new clients. It's just learning new techniques because, they pick up a lot as they're doing it themselves, and quite often the only review that they do of their work is probably through their evaluation sheets, which we call happy sheets in Australia. I'm not quite sure if that's a global term. But, people believe it, so, they need to get more constructive feedback. But it's sort of like, how can I take what I'm doing now and offer it in a variety of different methods or ways?
Yeah,
probably the biggest challenges.
Yeah, that's right.
And for corporates, it's probably, I think it's still the number one is like the stakeholder engagement. How do I get that seat at the table? How do we are seen as credible business partners within an organisation? How do we get the managers buy-in to make sure that if they've registered somebody on the training program, that they allow that person to turn up, or they don't pull them off halfway through the workshop, or they know exactly what's going on and what the person's going to be learning and how they can support them. Because I've got this little matrix which I share with managers, and it sort of has the manager, the learner, and the facilitator before, during, and after the workshop. And I just say to them, who has the biggest influence? And quite often they say the learner, and I've gone, no, it's the manager before the workshop. The second one is the manager after the workshop. They're the ones that are going to impact the learning the most.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a really great matrix that everyone in corporate L&D needs.
Yeah, and it's so simple, but it's effective because they think it's the learner, and quite often they'll send them off to a training program, pat themselves on the back because, look at me, I'm a good manager, I've sent them off to, learning. But if they don't do anything before or after, they're throwing their money out the door. So
yeah, and then what's really interesting about that is then I'm going to use the word, they then sort of slag off the program, but it's like, hang on, the accountability, like the program was great, but the legs were not given to it afterwards.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah, absolutely.
I love managers, by the way.
Me too. But I just sort of think we don't give them the tools, and that's why I think it's really important as L&D professionals. It's not just about your learners; it's the managers. How can they support them? What can they do? Do they know what you're going to be covering? Do they know what opportunities that would really help the person afterwards to to apply the skills and to keep building those skills.
It's a big education piece, and I think you're actually the first person in this show that's really, really emphasised the leading role that the manager has to play in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, they virtually leverage the results of the learning. So it's sort of, it's so important, and we do forget it, and that's my concern, is that, people all do, a tried and tested program, the people come in, they train them up, they send them back to the workplace, and nothing changes. It's sort of, you've got to think about, what else can I be doing outside of the workshop or however you deliver the training, even if it's virtual training, to help the learner and the organisation.
So, I mean, Kerry, you speak with such passion about all this. What really drives you in your quest to ensure that there is a return on investment in terms of learning, and also that there are great facilitators out there not wasting people's time?
Well, I love learning, and as I said, I think it comes back to that I've seen so many, and I can see that there is a huge need. But to me, it's all about, I guess when I was in organisations, it was a real hard act to be able to prove the quality of learning and get managers engaged and get them involved. And I see so many trainers out there that still, walk in, deliver, and walk out. It's just, to me, it's all about the results. It's all about the impact that the learning is going to have on the organisation. So it's sort of like, well, what can we do to support L&D professionals to improve their skills, to enable them to do that? And how do we then work with corporates to increase the credibility of that learning and development function within that organisation?
Mm-hmm.
So it drives me, because I've seen both ends of the spectrum, and I know what good learning is capable of doing, and it frustrates me that there's still people doing the same old. I've seen someone get up and deliver a program virtually verbatim 15 years after I saw it run the first time.
Oh no, Kerry, that's terrible.
I know. I went to the partner and said afterwards, I'm sorry, but we're not going to use that facilitator again, because it was actually on time management and work effectiveness, and it was just so old school, and I knew that it wasn't his original material. It was the same tried and tested stuff that, the fact that he hadn't refreshed it, just really frustrated me.
Like, where's the care?
It's all about the learner. So that person was all about him getting his money and just going, blah, here's the information dump, as opposed to, these are my learners. It's not about him. It's about the learners and what he can do to create that experience so that they walk away being able to perform better and, deliver better results for their team or organisation.
No, I love that you've got this passion that really lives on in the Institute for Learning Professionals. And it was the first time this year that I went to one of the conferences, the annual conference in Brisbane at the Convention Centre. And I remember walking back to my job and going, my mind was blown just with the amount, I wasn't, I talked to a lot of facilitators and I learned a lot of techniques, but the real value wasn't what you're talking about in terms of how do we then communicate this culture change or getting people on board within the organisation. I think I've just learned so many strategies. I also hear you've got some exciting plans for next year, some exciting ideas. Would you like to share that with our listeners?
It's interesting because it's sort of, I guess it's do as I say, but it's it's always trying to hone what we do, what can we do better, and raise the bar continuously. And I was just talking to one of our fellows, just before. And what we're trying to do is we don't want sort of people sitting on seats and having talking heads. It's always got to be interactive. But this time what we thought we might do is actually split it and have a group of one side of it for L&D professionals, independents, and the other one for corporates. And what we thought we might do is do some health checks or capability checks of where we are now, share some of the things that people are doing really well within the organisations and give them some skills. But the exciting thing is we're sort of thinking about doing like hackathons. So what are some of the challenges that they're facing in the industry, and getting the people that are there within the different areas to collaborate and network and come up with some amazing ideas and actually have it judged and awarded at the end of it. So you'll get all your skills, your knowledge, you'll get your networking, you'll get your collaboration, but you walk away with some really great solutions to some of the major challenges people are facing out there. So, yes, I'm really excited about it now.
I'm really excited about it too. Can you also share with our listeners what other support the ILP offers for people that are members? Because I know there's a lot of stuff and a lot of content and resources that'd be great for our listeners to hear about.
Yeah, we offer a lot of things, as you said, like resources. So we've got over 60 tools, so whether it's ebooks, videos, tools and templates. So we try and share things that are going to be helping people within organisations, or if you're independent, to talk to organisations. So there's a lot of those tools. We offer business essential benefits, so it could be stationery, it could be insurance, it could be, as we said, health checks within your organisation to see how you're performing. We also offer professional development, as I mentioned, the pathways. So next year we'll be launching the Certified Learning Institute, which will have those pathways depending on which way you want to go. Most of it will be, as I said, online, but there will be those touch points to come in and practice the skills with a group. We offer recognition, which is really important. So we have our awards night. So if you've done something that had a real impact, and speaking of awards, Leanne won one last year for Learning Professional of the Year. She was one of our finalists, so congratulations again. So it's sort of recognising some of the things that people are doing to make a difference, as well as, so we also recognise people with the Master Benchmark, which is the Certified Learning Professional. So that's people that have got like ongoing professional development. It's people who can prove some of the results from their learning. They have demonstrated their facilitation skills. So it's sort of like recognising those people. They're my role models within the industry, people that get that side of it. The other thing that we're going to be doing, as I said, monthly, the tech tasters. So we introduce people to some of the latest technologies, because there's so much out there. Like there's a lady, I think she's by the name of Jane Hart, that does learning tools, the top 200 learning tools each year. And in 2017, 25% of them were new. So people are like overwhelmed, and they're very reluctant to try new things because they're quickly out of date. So we just thought, once a month we'd introduce up to 3 new tools that are on the market, and share how L&D professionals might be able to use those. The other thing we want to do is do some, I mentioned before about our capability model with 6 dimensions. So we want to take some of those and run some live online webinars. So it might be getting 2 experts to talk about design and develop. It could be talking about business smarts or strategy and planning. So we want to sort of try and reach, not just within Australia or Australasia, but also around the world with some of the things that we're doing.
Amazing. And it's all coming from the hub in Brisbane, which makes me very proud.
It's a lovely spot to be.
It is. Hey, I always love asking our guests, is there one kind of book or resource or person that really influenced your facilitation style that you really sort of look up to? You mentioned the fellows, but is there, a resource or a person?
Oh, look, there's quite a few people I've noticed in the industry and sort of for different reasons. But there was one gentleman by the name of Dr. Bob Dick, who's pretty well known within Australia. And I just remember picking up his book, and I can picture the book, it's yellow, and I'm pretty sure it's helping groups to be effective. But I came across it just as I was transitioning from probably a process trainer to a facilitator doing supervisor training. And just some of the tools that were in there, like, the whole facilitation process, how to ask questions, lots of activities and things like that. So it's just one of those ones, that I've, it's very dog-eared and it's sitting on my bookshelf shelf downstairs. But that was really good. But what I find now is I don't tend to read a lot of books. I spend a lot of time talking with people to see what they're doing. But also there's some great research around, like Towards Maturity in the UK. They're doing some great benchmarking within organisations, and also Good Practice are doing quite a lot on technology and surveys and things like that. So I just like to see what people are doing, what's working, what's not working, and then try and pull that out and what can we do to support our members to be better with what they're doing.
So cool. And you mentioned Bob's book. I actually had Bob on the show, I think back episode 14 or 15, early days.
Yeah, he's a lovely, lovely man. Very humble. So
humble. You're like, so many people recommended him as the person that's been most influential in their facilitation careers. So,
oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all. He actually trained me in a supervisor course. I must have been 23, so way back. But it was funny because he was sort of an academic. He was at a bank and we were all formally dressed. He walks in shorts and sandals, and it was sort of like, whoa. But he was amazing. It was a great couple of days with him.
Oh, that's so cool. You mentioned that you don't really like icebreakers at the beginning of workshops. Do you have a favourite icebreaker or a favourite energizer at all?
Gosh, I haven't used any for so long because to me it's also about the design and keeping them engaged, so I don't need them. I'm sort of trying to think back when I did. Probably the one that I used to always fall back with way back would be an activity called Knots, where you get them all in, hold hands, and then they virtually have to untangle themselves. But, I've sort of learnt now whatever I do has to be relevant to the learning process, so it's got to be connected to the subject matter. So with the icebreakers, it tends to be like a question or activity. So if I'm doing something on facilitating with pictures, it might be getting them to share an example of when they've seen pictures used within a training situation. So that when they come on the course, shortly after we start, we do an activity where they get together and then they introduce themselves and then also share when they saw, pictures being used and that sort of stuff. So I tend to do that. I've seen so many programs where, icebreakers could take 45 minutes by the time you get around the whole group, and it's sort of like get up and talk about yourself in the third person, or interview the other person and share it. And I'm just sort of thinking, it's as a designer and facilitator, it's sort of, well, when I've got them there in front of me, how can I best utilise that time? So, and if you've got lots of activities, they will get to know each other throughout the day as well. So
yeah, I agree with you. And I've seen workshops that the icebreaker has taken so long, and it's like, okay, we've melted the ice, it's now water, and we're evaporating. It's evaporating.
We've sort of lost that process, and it's sort of like, and people are sitting there by the end of it going, okay, heard that, next, and it's sort of like, well, what are we going to learn? And you start to lose them, and it's sort of, it's your opportunity at the start of a workshop to grab them and engage them, get them involved, and so
100%. Kerry, thank you so much. Again, love your passion and how driven you are to rid the world of average facilitators just like me. So if some of our listeners would like to hear more about the programs that you offer or join the ILP, how can they contact you or contact the ILP?
Well, we're here at Hurston, so if you look up our address on our website, which is ilpworldwide.org, so we're just at Hurston. We welcome people to come and pop in and have a cup of coffee, or just give me a call or one of my team a call. We're happy to have a chat. Our members ring up all the time and just have a question. It might be sort of how much should I charge for this work, or what's happening in the industry. So it's call us, email us, or look us up on the website and see what else we do.
Kerry, thank you so much for your time and, again, all the influence that you have in the facilitation world. It was great chatting to you today on the show.
Look, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I think you're doing a marvellous job as well, sort of having something for first-time facilitators and sharing some of these things. My hats are off to you and well done.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you.
Ciao. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of First Time Facilitator. Make it easy for yourself and don't worry about having to find First Time Facilitator episodes ever again. If you just click that subscribe button in your podcast player of choice, that makes it really easy for you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show. You can either DM me on Instagram at First Time Facilitator, tweet me at Leanne Hughes, link up with me on LinkedIn. You can just search for Leanne Hughes, or join the Facebook group, The Flip Chart, and stay engaged with fellow listeners. Chat to you next week.